Welcome to Global Lens. Pleasure to have you with us again. And we're in our studio with Barbara Marx Hubbard, one of the great pioneers and the one who gave the word conscious evolution. And over these last 3-4 decades, it's become state of the art. And it's an honor to have her with us at this time. So please join me in welcoming to our show, Barbara Marx Hubbard. Barbara, welcome.
Thank you, Ashok. I'm really delighted to be here.
We're here at Haverford College for our big forum this afternoon, making sense of our great evolutionary shift. And this is very much in the air now. People are talking about shifts and transformations, and we know on the planet we're facing great crises. And people are trying, some of the evolutionary pioneers are trying to make a link in the public space between consciousness and transforming consciousness and becoming more conscious as addressing those issues facing humanity. And people don't necessarily connect them. Help us get a sense of where you are now in your pioneering work.
Well, here's a simple phrase. Our crisis is a birth. The whole crisis, environmental, social, financial, is led to an unsustainable world. Therefore, there has to be a shift if we're going to survive as a species. Now, people have been in a higher level of consciousness for thousands of years, but the crisis hasn't been so acute. And I think what's happening is because it's obvious and it's going to affect everyone. It's not just cultural. Global warming is not cultural. It will affect the whole planet. There are people awakening today to say simple things like, I'm not sure we're going to make it. What can I do to assure that we have a positive future? And that question doesn't have good answers because you can't get it from the existing power structure. You really can't look to the nation state, the global corporation, organized religion to tell you how to face an evolutionary crisis that can either lead to devolution and destruction or evolution, co-creation, and a higher future that has perhaps only been envisioned by the great saints and seers.
Help us understand when you say evolutionary crisis. Okay, that puts it in a new context. Say a little bit more about that. Is global warming or issues of poverty or social injustice and nuclear threats, terrorism, war, violence, are these part of evolutionary crisis?
Yes, we've had crises. Well, there are levels of crises, and in the study of evolution, when a crisis occurs where it can't continue to do more of the same, where something, even mass extinctions, there have been 5 mass extinctions before we got here, like the dinosaurs. A whole kind of life got wiped out, and by that crisis, mammals came in, and higher forms of life. And we are now in what they call the 6th mass extinction of other species, of our environment, and potentially of our human civilization. And so if it's an evolutionary crisis, it's a higher order than just a minor crisis you can get over. There have been many crises before that are evolutionary. And they're like out of, for example, single cells in the seas of early Earth were running out of energy. They were overpopulating, polluting, and they could have come to a limit of single-celled life in the early seas. Out of that came the chlorophyll molecule, photosynthesis, capturing sunlight, multicellular organisms. Then there was no biosphere. The organisms that came out on the sea came out into a place, if we had landed, we would have had to wear spacesuits. The biosphere was created. Then humans came in, they created language. And language has created now a global intelligence system, particularly on the internet and all these different types of...
This is where it's fascinating to see, so when we've arrived at this moment of a new stage of evolution, where language and consciousness and culture is playing a role. It's great to bring out the link between consciousness, or the level of consciousness, and the actual crises. Because if we're calling for conscious evolution as a remedy, that's going to really liberate humanity from this entrapment and possible extinction. What is that link then? Why are the crises directly linked to consciousness and culture? Is something wrong with culture and consciousness in this?
Well, it's because the crises can't be resolved in the state of consciousness in which those crises are created. Einstein has said this, it's widely quoted. So if the crises of overpopulation, pollution, overgrowth, competition can't be resolved by doing better at that, there's a pressure toward consciousness which sees greater connectivity, greater wholeness, greater internal connection to source, to spirit. And what you find is that reinforces what the great sages and great mystics of the past have told us, but they were esoteric. Now they're becoming evolutionary.
Right. Well, you know, on that theme, Buddha's Great Awakening was on this very point. He saw that why is there such pervasive suffering in culture and people? It's because they're enmeshed in a adolescent stage of consciousness, evolution, ego-based, and that the ego way of being was creating the suffering. So his remedy of upgrading consciousness to a new level, becoming more conscious, mindful, this eightfold path was practice mindfulness as a way to flourishing. And this is happening in the Bhagavad Gita with Krishna, coaching Arjuna, the ego-based person who's broken down, to use the yoga technology, consciousness transformation, to come into the higher awakened consciousness, to realize himself, to evolve. And you might see Jesus' call to die so you can be born again as a transformation into Christ consciousness. So you're right, the sages and teachers have all been calling on humanity. It may have been esoteric, but it was not meant to be. That's the point. It was meant to be for the mass culture.
Well, I think it was meant to be, but it seems to me that self-conscious humans were a phase of human consciousness. Before we had self-reflective consciousness, before Homo sapiens sapiens, there have been other forms of early humans. We've had Homo erectus, Homo habilis, Homo Neanderthal, early Homo sapiens, and then Homo sapiens sapiens, 40, 50,000 years ago, somewhat suddenly self-reflective consciousness. And that is to some degree ego-based. I think we had to differentiate out of nature and out of tribal culture until we were at the threshold of being individuals. But if we're trapped in that ego consciousness, we'll now destroy ourselves because we're too powerful.
And this is where the present state of crises are direct. We make our culture with our consciousness, so that kind of dysfunctional form is producing a dysfunctional world.
Big enough to cause conscious evolution. That's
Exactly
what I think.
Good.
And I think it started when the U.S. dropped the bombs on Japan in 1945. There's Einstein, who penetrated nature to find E equals mc squared. That was a great revelation of the mathematical genius. It liberated the power of the atom. What we did with it is build a bomb. And Hitler was a terrible menace, and you can see the moral challenge of what to do with that power. Now, just as the nuclear bombs are all over the world. 1,200 in the U.S. facing 1,200 in Russia, and we're not enemies.
And so that comes from a certain consciousness.
That consciousness has escalated to the possibility of mass catastrophe. Now, I think, as a student of evolution, that when you becoming conscious of mass catastrophe, collapse of civilization, whether environmental, nuclear, financial, or otherwise, is exactly the wake-up call that the great sages paved the way for. But for one reason or another, it wasn't applied at a mass level. And so the word conscious evolution to me arose for me when we dropped the bombs. Because I could see we are affecting our own evolution by everything we do. The babies we eat, the food we eat, the cars we drive, the battles we have, and the consciousness we're in.
As you're speaking, Barbara, it really is helping to bring out into sharper relief. If earlier forms of life, where there were catastrophes like the dinosaurs, whether it was a meteor that hit the planet and wiped out the sunlight and caused the loss of vegetation, whatever that caused, the comparable at this level of culture, the culture space, the ecology now, is the analog. And what can wipe us out is our own consciousness.
Our own consciousness, and that in a way is the evolutionary driver. Because we have some responsibility for our own consciousness. We have great pioneers in conscious evolution, in terms of consciousness.
Right. To be mindful, for example, Buddha's mindfulness, or
Can we apply that to social evolution,
Mm.
to scientific evolution, to create a culture that would be based on that form of consciousness? Has never existed before.
Mhm.
Never. We've had monasteries, we've had monks, we've had ashrams and temples, and but we haven't had a co-creative culture at this level. So there's an evolutionary emergence potential here.
Let's dream about this together a moment, just to sort of help our viewers get a sense of how does Barbara see this emergent culture. I mean, if we're really able to pull this off, and I think we have no choice, to move into this co-creative way. And if you look at compassionate culture, non-violent culture with this awakened consciousness, what do you see as we renovate the different education, economy, science, you know, the marketplace of democracy? Just dream a moment. What do you envision?
I have a simple phrase for it, that we are becoming, or could become, a co-creative society. What that would mean is that each human being has the creator within, the creative impulse, however you describe it. And it's spiritual, and it's also vocational. It's your calling. It's your gift. It's your creativity, your expression into the world. A co-creative society would be one which nurtures that spiritual and creative gift of its members in a way that they join to co-create, not just doing it in competition, but together to liberate more of everyone's creativity. And I really envisioned a mass awakening of human creativity in the consciousness of co-creation and connectivity.
Well, I think when you look at our great teachers, like Buddha and Jesus, to take two examples, this theme of dialogue. When you wake up into this consciousness, you call it co-creation, and what goes with that is I-thou. You know, the other is not an object anymore. That's the older consciousness, where you objectify yourself and the other. But now, when you face the other as a sacred being, as a sacred other, for co-creation, to dilate that space, that seems to be one of the challenges of the opening of space for the higher culture.
You know what I see when I look into your eyes?
You see love?
From an evolutionary, I look at you with evolutionary eyes.
Yes.
First of all, I see that evolutionary spiral in my mind of, you know, universe, earth, life, and I see running through that spiral a core, which I call universal intelligence. And I know it runs up through each of us into our whole set of chakras, right up into our heart, our vocation, and our eyes. And what I was seeing in you is the core of the spiral, the universal process of creation coming through your eyes as your expression and what you're actually doing in the world. I mean, if I put you in the evolutionary context, you are evolving humanity to open up its consciousness that these great pioneers before us, like Buddha and Jesus, have done, in order for us to apply it through communication, communion, in such a way that we can evolve the world. And what I'm doing is I'm taking the core of the spiral in me that's coming up through my heart and my vocation and my voice. I have a passion for conscious evolution. So what we're doing right now is we're joining genius. I love that phrase. In order to have
What does it mean to you, joining genius?
Well, you know, I thought of it this way. Nature has figured out how to reproduce the species. You join genes. Sperm,
I
egg creates baby. Totally amazing miracle. At the next level, each person has unique creativity, which is really coming from the source of creation, but individualized. You are a very unique being. I'm very unique. I have a set of creative capacities that nature, God, gave to me. I didn't make them up. They're here. And you know what brings them out is union and communion with at least one or more other, where what I most yearn to give is something that you might need in order for you to give more of what you most yearn to give. And your genius, and I just visually think of it as coming up from the whole process of creation, as well as coming down from higher dimensions. When two or more people join their creativity, you're joining the creator within each. So it's more than just Ashok and Barbara. It's more than just two intelligent people having a conversation. It's the universe attempting to create more by joining.
And that's where emergence, creative emergence
Yes.
comes in.
Now what comes out of our joining cannot be predicted fully. Just like when you have sperm and egg, you have no real idea what that baby is going to be like. And I've noticed in the process of resonance, resounding, you get more likely to speak from that double brackets, which is the higher voice. And if two people can speak higher voice with higher voice in a feeling of resonance and love, nature wants to create more.
That's right. I didn't realize our viewers here at Barbara Marx, and we get the sexy. This is a co-creation, and when Barbara just mentioned double brackets, it's our code for when you go into the evolved consciousness and shift out of the ego-based. We use double brackets to mention that, and that's where the dance of dialogue and co-creativity of all of our geniuses on the planet have been calling us into this. And what would the culture, we're imagining together, what would our culture be like? And it needs to emerge. How's it going? We're trying to vision that together. Join us in this dreaming.
It's actually quite yummy. It's attractive. It's joyful. And when you said, what's your vision of a society? If I said a co-creative society would be our educational system, our relational system, our institutions would all be fostering people finding that unique essence of their being. What is the calling within them that is given to create?
It's interesting, Barbara, that we're sitting here in Haverford College, outside of Philadelphia, founded by the Quakers. Over 175 years ago, in the Margaret Guest Center for Cross-Cultural Study of Religion, in front of a beautiful painting by a Buddhist artist, showing all things are co-arising and co-creative, and the middle way as the way into this new culture. And the Quakers, it seemed to me, were holding this kind of space. Quaker silence, when Quaker meeting, and you meet in silence, you check your ego at the door, if it's going to work, and you sit in the Christ consciousness, and you speak from that higher consciousness. Imagine a college that's founded on that space, and whether we're able to sustain that is a question.
Well, that's exactly what I think is possible, because if you design education as the purpose to discover in each person that unique expression, and then to find the teams, the partners, one of the greatest gifts for co-creation is the right partnerships, because almost nobody can do this alone. So you go by the law of attraction. That is to say, you're attracted to give your gift, not just to what you can get, but what you can give. And education would have to be able to bring that out of people as much as possible. Then to find where is that gift most needed by somebody else's gift. And when you join together, you get that joining of genius.
Right. And I think Socrates, one of our great courageous heroes, as a midwife of ideas, was modeling that kind of dialogue. You know,
dialogue.
You draw it out of the other and the midwifing of those ideas.
Then if you put it in the context of conscious evolution, which is we're living in a culture where a whole civilization could collapse or evolve.
Right.
So every student would need to know that what they are coming up with, or what the process of creation is surfacing in them, joining with others in the context of the knowledge of the human species that we already have. And the real question is, what do you want to create? Elizabeth Satoris told me once she was with a group of 1,000 students in Brazil, and they were talking about environment. And her opening to them was, you're the luckiest generation alive because you're going to have to reinvent culture.
It's a shift culture, right? It's not Generation X, but a generation shift, I think.
Because you see, the culture we have actually is not viable in the long run. It's dependent on unsustainable growth. It's unjust. The monetary system leads to scarcity. There is vast inequality and injustice structured in the way we are with pyramidal top-down structures. And you know what? That's not even a criticism. That built civilization. But those structures can't handle the complexity of a whole system shift.
Well, and there's an evolution, just as a caterpillar has to become a butterfly. is in the evolutionary process. I mean, whatever adolescent phase we may be in the structure building, we need to really move to the next level.
We do, and I'm teaching a teleseminar called Evolutionary Metamorphosis.
How can our viewers get involved in that?
Just BARBARAMARXHUBBARD.com.
Okay.
You can click on it, and these teleseminars are this starts October 28th, but it'll be they're archived. And what I'm going to do is say, if we have been in the body of the caterpillar, and the caterpillar is bloated and can't continue to grow. It's really true in this society. Some of us are jumping from that caterpillar body into the chrysalis. And I've watched the monarch butterfly. The chrysalis, the caterpillar literally disappears. And you can watch through the skin gets thinner of the chrysalis. You see these little imagined cells, they're building wings. They're building little antennae. And then at a certain point, they pop out. I feel that many of us are like those little imaginal cells. We're not just resonating and networking right now. We are ready to internalize the deeper heart's desire within us and to find out exactly what part of the new social culture we are called to build. And that school is about that.
So imaginal beings, so to speak, are like the pioneers of evolution. You know, that's going to really, in the catharsis and the shift and the facilitation of a shift into the butterfly.
That's right, and we haven't seen the societal butterfly. We have not seen a fully co-creative culture at any scale, certainly not in modern society.
You know, well, when you spoke earlier about education and that co-creativity, I was immediately thinking, here we are in Philadelphia, the birthing of the nation of America, and democracy in its form, and we the people, and it appears to many of us that one of the crises we face is the broken civic space. We're not in co-creation. We're not able to face each other in sacred space. And it seems to me that if democracy, which we treasure, and individuality and the sacredness of individual is going to flourish, this evolution that we're speaking of has to take place in the civic space as well.
Well, it does, and you know, I'm a Bryn Mawr graduate.
Also from Philadelphia.
Political
area.
science.
Yes.
And here you are at Haverford. And it would be great if Haverford and Bryn Mawr would have some form of evolutionary dialogue on what are the ideas, what are the memes that could lead to a culture equal to our spiritual, social, and scientific potential. Those memes are ideas that create culture. We've had Nazism, we've had communism, we've had global corporations, we've had biblical literalism, many, many memes. Some of them are really disastrous. The new memes are very much like what some of them are ancient, but bringing them up to date, and then adding the innovations in health, education, economics, energy. We have a new world already emerging in our midst.
And I think in listening to this great wisdom of our teachers, it's shifting from a life of scarcity, a life of competition, to one of this co-creation model. I'm just trying to look at the meme.
Yes.
The meme has got to be, if it's going to be a meme of wisdom and consciousness and mindfulness, it's going to be care, nurturing, mutuality, respect, dancing together, you know, with nature as well, in sacred space somehow.
Yes, and I am, although I don't do a lot of it, I've just been really understanding what Facebook means. It's the fourth largest nation in the world. India, China, United States, Facebook. 500 million people and counting fast.
Are you saying that's Facebook has reached out enormously?
Yes,
really?
yes, it has.
I have not been paying attention to that.
500 million people
Well,
are on to make friends. I mean, you can make fun of it, and much of it is ridiculous. Nonetheless, what's happened is that these big structures like government and television media and publishing companies are not holding us anymore. The people are going right direct to each other everywhere in a global intelligence system that actually is knitting together so fast that you can ask anything and somewhere in the world, somebody knows it. Do you realize the new plenum of noosphere that we're in?
It's being embodied, incarnated in this form, isn't it?
In noosphere, the thinking layer.
Yeah.
And Teilhard de Chardin, the great philosopher, believed that at some point the noosphere would help us connect heart with heart, center with center, this empathy with each other around the planet, from the center of our beings where we're sourcing our creativity.
Right.
And that the noosphere, that there would be a time where we would feel coordinated. See, we're made of trillions of cells coordinated as our bodies. I'm always amazed at that. The eye, the thumb, that what it takes to have a body. We didn't do any of that. But nature has done this, body after body after body, with huge coordination of separate parts. When nature hits crises, it jumps to higher synergy. I believe we're at the threshold of social synergy. Connectivity, probably through the deep, intimate personal sharing and high-level internet social media.
Right, and that internet also is in sync with the dialogue, interfacing, interconnectivity.
That's what it is. I just saw the movie The Social Network, and how these kids at Harvard figured this out, and they started out with elite universities where people wanted to make friends.
Right. So if you imagine, say, the democratic space in the American scene, for example, not to mention the global, as the emergence of global citizenship across borders. Part of it is learning to connect across borders, and this Facebook or internet is going to...
It's totally global,
Yeah.
and it's almost is obsolete to think across borders because there's no border. You know, like when the astronauts saw Earth from space, one of the things they always said, oh, there are no national
They
barriers.
didn't see, yeah.
So I never thought of this, Ashok, but when you said you go across borders, well, if I'm on Facebook with somebody in China or India, I don't think, oh, I'm going across border. Because actually it's intimate. Intimacy.
Right.
Now, it does not take the place of personal being with each other.
I've found I can have really deep dialogues through email or internet connections.
And
with
Skype.
Others. Yeah, exactly.
So I think the noosphere, the thinking layer of Earth, is connecting us in the ways that it can, starting with the way the computer works all the way on up, and that within that individuals are turning on, apart from their backgrounds or where their cultures have put them, seeking their inner expression, their connectivity, the release of creativity. And conscious evolution would be, for me, the greatest awakening of human creativity, connectivity, inspiration, and participation in actually a species being born as a universal humanity.
Right.
Both on this Earth, in the solar system. The galaxies are probably filled with life.
Our time is just about up, and, and we're just getting started. We're going to have to continue
I
this,
know.
Barbara. But in our remaining couple of minutes, you use the word universal humanity. I might throw our viewers off. What does that mean? We're speaking about across borders, and humans are so profoundly different and diverse on this planet. And if we're going to look at it in a planetary setting, and you speak about universal humanity, let's end this phase of our conversation by hearing your reflection on that. Say more about that.
I believe in the evolution of consciousness. We have been evolving for billions of years. Certainly humans have, from Neanderthal to early humans to us. I think there's been a type of human emerging for thousands of years, of which now we have become a new norm. And that human feels connected through the heart to the whole of life. Natural empathy with nature, with each other, with suffering. This human is activated from within by the desire to express, create unique creativity. This type of person feels a cosmic consciousness. We feel related to all dimensions of life beyond the five senses. This human has a sense of innate expectancy, attraction, and hope is too light a word. I would say a sense of emergence. And it's a type.
And emergence always suggests some innovation, some unprecedented breakthrough.
And desire to participate in it. And it's my intuition from my experience that this type is scattered everywhere. Every culture, every race, every age, every stage. And it's independent of what we've called all these differences.
Right, so the emergence of universal humanity would be finding that interconnectivity, that I-thou with each other, on a planetary scale.
Start with the ones that are attracted innately, which you know is true in every culture.
Right.
They are the rising tide of consciousness of humans. When they get connected, they lift the field.
Right.
So it's easier for others to get connected.
Well, we have to sign off now. I find you very attractive.
So it's never everybody getting everything all at once.
That's right. Thanks for joining us in this conversation. We're going to continue this, but thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, Ashok.
And thank you for watching Global Lens.